The lifeguard closed the pool early. Water stilled, and so did the space between us. The last shimmer of sunlight danced across the water's surface as I stood at the edge of the community pool. The usual chorus of splashing and laughter had faded into an unusual silence that evening. The chlorine scent hung in the air, mingling with the approaching dusk, creating that distinct summer pool fragrance that always brought me back to simpler times. But today, the emptiness felt wrong. The lifeguard had closed the pool early, and in that decision, something shifted between us. I watched him methodically putting away equipment, his movements deliberate, avoiding my gaze across the expanse of still water that now separated us like an uncrossable sea. Let me take you back to understand why this matters. Why the closing of a simple community pool could feel like the closing of a chapter between two people. For 3 summers, I had been coming to this pool almost daily. It started as a place for exercise, for the meditative laps that cleared my mind after long workdays. But it became something more when Marco became the head lifeguard. Our relationship began with simple nods, evolved to brief conversations during his breaks, and eventually blossomed into something that existed in a delicate space between friendship and something more profound. We never put a name to it. That was part of its magic and its fragility. The pool was where our lives intersected, where chlorinated water washed away the pretenses we might have maintained elsewhere. In the following minutes, I'll share how this sanctuary of blue water and shared glances transformed into a metaphor for everything unspoken between us, and how his decision to close the pool early that evening rippled through our carefully constructed reality. Water has always been a powerful symbol in human connection. Think about it. We're drawn to beaches for vacations. We gather around lakes for celebrations. We find peace beside rivers. There's something about water that connects us to our emotions. Perhaps because water itself is so expressive, it can be calm or turbulent, shallow or deep, clear or murky, just like our feelings. For Marco and me, the pool represented this emotional landscape we navigated together. When filled with people, the pool was alive with possibility, much like the early days of our connection, full of energy and the excitement of something new forming. But on quieter evenings, when the crowds thinned and we found moments to talk as he completed his closing duties, the water became still, reflective, much like our deeper conversations. I would help him check the pH levels sometimes, learning about the delicate chemical balance needed to keep the water safe. It's all about equilibrium, he once told me. Too much of anything can make the water unsafe. I often wondered if he was really talking about us, about the careful balance we maintained. The pool was more than just a setting. It was the medium through which we understood each other. Now, let me explain why the pool's early closure that day carried so much significance. Marco took his responsibilities as head lifeguard with the utmost seriousness. Safety was never compromised under his watch. He knew every regulation by heart, could spot a struggling swimmer from impossible distances, and maintained the facility with meticulous care. His dedication was one of the qualities I admired most about him. When he made the decision to close the pool early that evening, it wasn't made lightly. I knew that, but knowing didn't ease the disappointment. Earlier that day, there had been reports of an approaching storm system. The sky remained clear overhead, but Marco had been monitoring the weather alerts on his phone. Better safe than sorry, he'd explained to the grumbling teenagers as he blew the whistle 3 times, the signal to clear the water. Most patrons gathered their belongings and left quickly, but I lingered, hoping to catch a few moments with him as I usually did. But something was different. His movements were more hurried, his usual warm smile replaced with a focused expression I couldn't quite read. There were other factors at play too. The pool's chemistry had been difficult to balance all week, with the recent heat wave causing more rapid chlorine depletion than usual. I'd overheard him discussing it with the maintenance staff that morning. And then there was the phone call he'd received during his lunch break, the one that had caused him to walk to the far corner of the deck, his free hand gesturing emphatically as he spoke in hushed tones. When he returned, something had changed in his demeanor. His eyes, usually so present when we spoke, seemed to be looking through me rather than at me. The impact of his decision to close early rippled beyond just the disappointed swimmers. For us, it created a disruption in our routine, the comfortable pattern we'd established over 3 summers. Our end-of-day conversations while he closed up had become a ritual I looked forward to more than I cared to admit. These moments, caught between day and evening, responsibility and freedom, had become sacred. The early closure felt like more than a change in schedule. It felt like a door closing between us. As the last family gathered their towels and departed, the immediate aftermath of the pool closing settled around us like a heavy blanket. The physical distance was obvious. Marco busied himself with chemical testing on the far side of the pool, while I remained near the entrance, unsure if I should leave or stay. But the emotional distance felt even greater. The easy conversation that usually flowed between us had dried up, leaving only awkward silence in its place. I made a few attempts at normal interaction. Need any help? And looks like the storm might miss us after all. His responses were polite but brief, lacking the warmth and engagement I'd grown accustomed to. This sudden shift made me reflect on our past interactions and how they had evolved. I remembered the first time we really talked, beyond the perfunctory greetings. I had stayed late, swimming laps after most people had gone home. When I finally emerged from the water, he was adjusting the pool cover and mentioned how my swimming form had improved. "You've been watching me?" I'd asked, surprised and a little pleased. His slight blush had been answer enough. That had opened the door to conversations about technique, which led to discussions about our shared love of water, which somehow meandered into talks about our dreams, our childhoods, our fears. Over time, these conversations had deepened, creating a tapestry of shared moments. There was the evening he taught me about the constellations visible from the pool deck, his hand guiding mine as he traced Cassiopeia in the darkening sky. There was the afternoon I brought homemade cookies after he mentioned missing his grandmother's baking. There were countless small kindnesses exchanged, meaningful glances shared across chlorinated water. But recently, something had begun to shift. Our conversations had grown more guarded, as if we both recognized that we were approaching a boundary neither was prepared to cross. The growing misunderstandings started small, a joke taken the wrong way, an unavailable day interpreted as avoidance, a friendly gesture toward another swimmer misread as something more. These minor miscommunications had accumulated like sediment at the bottom of a pool, clouding the once clear water between us. And now, with him closing the pool early and creating this unusual silence, I found myself wondering if we were witnessing the end of whatever undefined thing had grown between us. Standing there at the edge of the empty pool, I felt a profound sense of loss and longing. The water, now still and reflecting the darkening sky, mirrored my internal state. I missed the easy camaraderie we'd shared just weeks ago. I missed the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled at something I said. I missed the feeling of possibility that had hummed between us like electricity. But more than anything, I missed the certainty I once had that whatever was happening between us was real and mutual. Now, watching him methodically complete his closing tasks with barely a glance in my direction, doubt crept in like the approaching night. But what about Marco's perspective? What internal struggles was he facing behind that focused exterior? I tried to imagine the weight of his responsibilities, not just to the safety of swimmers, but to his job, his future. He'd mentioned applying to graduate programs in marine biology, his passion for understanding and protecting water ecosystems. Perhaps the pressure of those applications was weighing on him. Or maybe it was something more personal. The phone call he'd received, could it have been family trouble? He rarely spoke of his family, except to mention his younger siblings with obvious affection. There was also the complicated position he occupied as the lifeguard while I was a regular patron. Professional boundaries existed for a reason, and maybe he was feeling the strain of maintaining appropriate distance while our personal connection deepened. I had noticed how careful he was to never show me special attention when others were present, how our most meaningful conversations always happened after hours or during his breaks, away from watchful eyes. The burden of maintaining these boundaries must have been exhausting, especially if his feelings mirrored my own growing attachment. The symbolism of the still water wasn't lost on me as I stood there watching the surface grow more mirror-like with each passing minute. When water moves, it's alive with possibility. Waves can carry you forward or pull you under. But still water reflects, forces you to see yourself clearly. Perhaps that's what was happening between us now. This unexpected stillness was creating a moment of reflection, showing us truths we'd been avoiding in the constant motion of our daily interactions. The moments of silence between us had always been comfortable before, a natural rhythm in our conversations like the pause between ocean waves. But this silence felt different, heavier, laden with unspoken thoughts. I caught him looking at me once, his expression unreadable, before he quickly turned away to adjust a pool chair that was perfectly aligned already. What thoughts were running through his mind? What words were caught in his throat, just as they were in mine? The weight of everything unsaid hung in the air between us, more palpable than the humidity of the summer evening. Just as I had decided that perhaps it was best to leave, to give him the space he seemed to be creating, a sudden crack of thunder broke the silence. We both jumped, startled, and then our eyes met across the pool deck. For the first time that evening, he really looked at me, and I saw something in his expression, vulnerability, perhaps, or relief at the breaking of tension. "I guess I made the right call after all," he said, gesturing toward the darkening sky. It was a small opening, but I took it. "You always do," I replied, taking a few steps toward him. "Make the right call, I mean. About the pool, about safety. You're good at taking care of everyone." I paused, gathering courage. "But who takes care of you, Marco?" The question hung between us as another rumble of thunder rolled overhead, closer this time. A few heavy raindrops began to fall, creating perfect circles on the still surface of the pool. Marco looked up at the sky, then back at me, and something in his expression shifted. "I got some news today," he said finally. "About grad school. I've been accepted to the program in Florida." Florida. The word fell between us like a stone. More than 1,000 miles away from our Midwestern community pool. The distance I'd been feeling suddenly had a name, a reason, a geography. That's wonderful," I managed, meaning it despite the hollow feeling spreading through my chest. "It's what you've been working toward." "It is," he agreed, but there was a hesitation in his voice. "But it means leaving. Leaving this place. Leaving." He didn't finish the sentence, but his eyes held mine, and I understood what he couldn't say. "Leaving you." The rain began to fall more steadily now, but neither of us moved to take shelter. There was something cleansing about standing there as the sky opened up, as if the rain might wash away the uncertainty between us. "When do you go?" I asked, needing to know how much time we had left. "End of August," he replied. "About 6 weeks." 6 weeks. It seemed both an eternity and no time at all. The knowledge of his departure created a deadline, a defined endpoint to whatever undefined thing had been growing between us. And in that moment, facing the certainty of an ending, something shifted. The fear that had kept us circling each other, never quite acknowledging what we felt, suddenly seemed pointless. "I've been keeping my distance," he admitted, running a hand through his hair as rain plastered it to his forehead. "Trying to make it easier when I have to leave. I thought if I started pulling away now, it wouldn't hurt so much later. That's why I closed early today. I couldn't face another one of our talks knowing that soon they'll be over." His honesty broke something open between us, creating space for my own truth. "I've been afraid too," I confessed. "Afraid of naming this thing between us, because once something has a name, it can break your heart when you lose it." The rain was coming down harder now, creating a curtain around us, a private world where truth felt safer to speak. But I think not naming it, pretending it isn't important, that's already breaking my heart. Marco took a step toward me, closing the physical gap that had felt so insurmountable earlier. 6 weeks is still 6 weeks, he said quietly. Maybe instead of preparing for goodbye, we could make those weeks count. The decision to bridge the gap rather than maintain distance wasn't made with words. It happened in the way he reached for my hand, in the way I stepped forward to meet him halfway. The rain continued to fall around us, soaking us completely, but neither of us moved to seek shelter. There was something perfect about standing there in the downpour, all pretenses washed away, facing the reality of limited time, but choosing connection anyway. As I reflect now on the consequences of the lifeguard's decision to close the pool early that day, I see how a moment that initially felt like rejection became the catalyst for honesty. The still water of the empty pool had created a mirror forcing us to see ourselves and each other clearly. Had he kept to the regular schedule, had we fallen into our usual pattern of careful conversation, we might never have broken through to the truths we needed to share. The imagery of that still water has stayed with me. In the weeks that followed, Marco and I no longer danced around the reality of our feelings or his impending departure. We spoke openly about what had been growing between us for 3 summers, acknowledged the depth of connection that had formed through countless conversations beside chlorinated water. We made the most of our remaining time, creating memories to sustain us through the separation ahead. And when the day of his departure finally came, there were tears but no regrets. We had used our time well. Water teaches us many things if we pay attention. It shows us that stillness can be as powerful as movement, that reflection is necessary for clarity, that what appears as an ending, like water circling a drain, is really just a transformation into another state of being. The early closing of the pool that day created a still moment in which truth could no longer remain submerged. The space between us, which had felt so vast and uncrossable in those initial moments after everyone left, ultimately became the ground on which we built something real, something honest, something unafraid of distance or time. In relationships, we often fear vulnerability, change, and the inevitable partings that life brings. We create elaborate systems to protect ourselves from pain, just as Marco had done by closing the pool early, by trying to create distance before distance was forced upon him. But what I've come to understand is that these protective measures often cause the very pain we're trying to avoid. It was only when we stopped fighting against the current of our feelings, when we allowed ourselves to be carried by them instead, that we found peace with our situation. Love and longing exist in uncertain circumstances. That's their nature. There are never guarantees, only choices about how fully we show up for the connections that matter to us. Marco's struggle between duty and personal connection reflected a universal tension we all face. How do we honor our responsibilities while also honoring our hearts? There is no perfect balance, only the daily choice to do our best with the understanding we have in each moment. If there's one thing I've learned from that summer, from the lifeguard who closed the pool early and inadvertently opened a door between us, it's that communication is the bridge across all uncertain waters. The fears we don't speak grow monstrous in the dark corners of our minds. The feelings we don't acknowledge don't disappear. They simply go underground, shaping our actions in ways we don't fully understand. It was only when the rain gave us permission to be honest that we found our way to each other, despite knowing separation waited on the horizon. So when you find yourself standing at the edge of still water, seeing your reflection more clearly than you might like, remember that stillness offers gifts that movement cannot. Remember that the space between people is never fixed. It can expand with silence or contract with a single honest word. And remember that sometimes, when the lifeguard closes the pool early and everything seems to be ending, it's really just the beginning of a deeper understanding, a truer connection, a love brave enough to face its own limitations and find beauty in them anyway. Total_count. 13,982.